Did Diana's bodyguard witness a moment of royal rage? Everyone believed he did. The tabloids called it the confrontation of the century. The palace dismissed it as gossip. Royal biographers insisted it was exaggerated drama. Millions read the headlines about the night Diana finally faced her husband's mistress. They were all wrong. June 1989, 11:47 p.m, Ludlow, Shropshire. Diana stood in a hallway outside a private party. Her hands were trembling. Her eyes were fixed on a door she was about to walk through. Ken Wharfe stood 3 feet behind her, close enough to hear her breathing. "I'm going in," she whispered. The door opened. Voices stopped mid-sentence. But that moment, the moment Diana confronted Camilla Parker Bowles, didn't happen the way they told you. It started 4 years earlier. With a phone call Diana was never supposed to hear, and a promise Charles made that he would break 42 times before Diana finally stopped counting. This is the real story of the night Diana's bodyguard watched her walk into the lion's den, the one Ken Wharfe still can't forget 35 years later. 4 years earlier, 1985, late autumn. Kensington Palace was supposed to be a sanctuary. The marriage was already crumbling. Diana was 24 years old, and she was keeping a mental list of every betrayal. What the world saw: the Princess of Wales, radiant in public, the perfect royal wife and new mother. What was actually happening: a young woman who knew exactly where her husband was every Tuesday and Thursday night, and it wasn't with her, and one man was watching all of it. His name was Ken Wharfe. He'd just been assigned to Diana's protection team. He carried a badge, a weapon, and a growing sense that the fairy tale was a lie. Diana didn't know it yet, she couldn't have known, but in 4 years that bodyguard would stand beside her during the most confrontational moment of her life, and the words he heard would echo in his mind for decades, and the fairy tale would shatter forever. The Diana you think you know? She doesn't exist. The weeping princess who couldn't handle the pressure? Diana had nerves of steel when it mattered. 1985, she walked into Buckingham Palace and demanded answers from the Queen herself about Charles's affair. "I'm not going to be treated like this," she said. The naive girl who married for love, Diana knew exactly what she was getting into. 1989, she told Ken Wharfe, "I'm not stupid. I know what's happening. I just need to hear her admit it." The victim who stayed silent? Diana was planning her confrontation for years. 1987, she started documenting Charles's movements, his phone calls, his absences. She kept a diary. She built a case. The real Diana was strategic, calculated, and angrier than anyone realized. 1988, she hired a private investigator to confirm Camilla's address. She never told Charles. She just filed the information away. 1989, 3 months before the party, she asked Ken Wharfe point blank, "If I wanted to confront someone, would you stop me?" He said no. She smiled. Good. 1989, June, 2 weeks before the party, Diana learned Camilla would be attending a birthday celebration for Camilla's sister. Diana wasn't invited. She didn't care. But here's what made Diana vulnerable: her need to be seen. To be heard, to make them acknowledge what they'd done. "I don't want revenge," Diana told Ken. "I want her to look me in the eye and know that I know." She wanted validation, and Camilla knew exactly how to deny her that. The quality that made Diana brave enough to fight back was the same quality that would leave her standing alone in a hallway, shaking with adrenaline, realizing that confrontation wouldn't bring closure. She just didn't know it yet. 1989 was the year everything started to converge. Threat 1: Camilla Parker Bowles. Camilla had been in Charles's life since 1970, 5 years before he even met Diana. She'd never left. She never planned to. What she wanted from Diana was simple: for Diana to accept her place in the arrangement, to play along, to stop making waves. Threat 2: Charles's complicity. Charles wasn't just allowing the affair, he was protecting it. June 1989, he'd started bringing Camilla to semi-public events, hunting parties, private dinners, society gatherings. He was testing the waters, gauging how much he could get away with, and it was working. The aristocracy closed ranks, the upper class understood. Diana was the outsider making a fuss about something everyone else had accepted. Threat 3: Diana's isolation. Diana was cornered. She had no allies in the palace. The Queen told her to be patient. Prince Philip wrote her letters telling her to stop being irrational. The staff whispered that she was unstable, and Ken Wharfe, the one person who saw everything, couldn't interfere. His job was to protect her body, not her heart. None of these forces knew about the others. But they were all moving toward the same target, the convergence. In early June 1989, Diana learned about the party. At the same time, Charles told her he'd be away on business that weekend, the exact weekend of the party. And Diana, isolated, angry, determined, made a decision. The trap was set. Diana had 2 weeks before she walked through that door, and she spent that time rehearsing what she would say. Ken Wharfe came to Diana with the truth. "Ma'am, if you go to that party, there will be consequences," Ken told her. "The palace will say you're unstable. The press will turn it into a spectacle." It sounded like protection. It sounded like good advice. It sounded like exactly what Diana needed to hear. But Diana heard something else. Promise 1: if she confronted Camilla, she'd finally get answers. She'd finally make someone acknowledge the affair. Promise 2: if she showed strength, showed she wouldn't be pushed aside, Charles would have to respect her. Promise 3: if she stood up for herself, the humiliation would end. Diana had reasons to be cautious. She'd been told to stay quiet before, and staying quiet had only made things worse. But this time was different. Or so it seemed. Ken's approach was careful. He didn't forbid her. He didn't lecture. He simply said, "I'll be right beside you, whatever happens." That was the line that convinced her. Not that she shouldn't go, but that she wouldn't be alone. "I need to do this, Ken," Diana said. "I need to look her in the eye." Ken nodded. Diana took a breath. What Diana didn't know, Camilla had been warned Diana might show up. Charles had already told Camilla to ignore any drama. The partygoers had been briefed to treat Diana coolly if she arrived uninvited. The promise was a lie. And Diana had just walked into a room full of people who'd already decided she was the villain. 48 hours until the party. The clock was ticking. Diana had seen this before. The icy politeness, the closing of ranks, the aristocracy protecting its own. But on June 17th, 1989, Diana couldn't ignore it anymore. The moment of realization, she was standing in her closet, choosing what to wear to the party. Ken was waiting outside, and Diana realized, with sudden, horrifying clarity, that no matter what she said, no matter how perfectly she delivered her confrontation, Camilla would never admit anything. Charles would never apologize. The circle would never open to let her in. Her hands stopped moving through the dresses. She stared at her reflection in the mirror. The silence stretched. "They're never going to choose me, are they?" she said aloud to no one. Something changed in Diana's eyes. The hopeful woman who thought confrontation would bring closure was gone. In her place stood someone who understood that this wasn't about winning. It was about refusing to disappear. Diana had 2 choices: stay home, accept it, let them have their party, their affair, their unspoken arrangement, or go, risk everything, make them see her, force them to acknowledge that she existed and that she mattered. Diana chose to go. "I'm not doing this to change anything," Diana told Ken as they drove to Ludlow. "I'm doing this so I can stop wondering what if." Her preparation? She wore a black dress, not royal blue, not soft pastels, black. She rehearsed her opening lines 17 times in the car. She told Ken, "If I start crying, don't touch me, Let me finish." The palace thought Diana was acting on impulse. They thought she would make a scene and regret it. They were wrong. Diana was preparing to fight back, and she knew exactly what she was walking into. June 17th, 1989, 11:47 p.m. The hallway outside the private party in Ludlow, Shropshire. The sounds of conversation and laughter drifted through the door. Diana stood perfectly still. Ken Wharfe stood behind her, scanning the hallway, his jaw tight. Diana knocked. The apparent victory. The door opened. Camilla's sister stood there, eyes wide. "Diana," she said, too surprised to hide her shock. Diana walked in. The reaction. The room went silent. 30 people turned to stare. Camilla stood near the fireplace, holding a glass of champagne. For one long frozen moment, their eyes met. The public response. Diana crossed the room. Every step was measured. She stopped in front of Camilla. "Hello, Camilla," she said. "I think we should talk." Statistics of the victory: 30 witnesses, 1 confrontation, 0 interruptions. Diana had walked into the lion's den and no one had stopped her. Diana had done what she came to do. Moment of triumph. "I know what's going on," Diana said, her voice steady. "I know about you and Charles. I just wanted to hear you say it." Camilla smiled, a small, tight smile. "I don't know what you mean," she said. For 3 minutes it seemed like Diana had won. She'd said the words. She'd forced the confrontation. Camilla hadn't run. Diana stood her ground. The witnesses would remember it. Ken Wharfe would write about it years later. History would record it. Diana was vindicated. But what nobody saw coming. Camilla's smile never wavered. She didn't admit anything. She didn't apologize. She didn't even look uncomfortable. She simply said, "You've got everything you ever wanted. Why are you so unhappy?" And then she turned her back. The victory was real, but it wasn't complete. And in the car ride home, Diana would discover that confrontation doesn't heal betrayal. It just makes you realize how alone you really are. Remember June 17th, 1989, 11:47 p.m.? That hallway in Ludlow? We're back. Diana stood in the hallway outside the party. Her hands were trembling. Her eyes were fixed on the door she was about to walk through. Ken Wharfe stood 3 feet behind her, close enough to hear her breathing, close enough to see the way her fingers tightened into fists, close enough to hear her whisper to herself, "Don't cry. Don't let them see you cry." The room held its breath. Diana had imagined this moment 1,000 times. She'd rehearsed the words. She'd pictured Camilla's face. She planned her exit. But what she hadn't planned for was what happened after she spoke. What she hadn't planned for was Camilla's response. What she hadn't planned for was the way 30 people watched in silence as Camilla said, "You've got everything you ever wanted. Why are you so unhappy?" Then Camilla turned. "I wanted her to flinch," Diana said later. Silence. The immediate aftermath. Camilla walked away. Returned to her conversation. Took a sip of champagne. The party resumed. People started talking again, carefully avoiding Diana's gaze. Charles's friends closed ranks around Camilla, a human shield of politeness and cold shoulders. Diana stood alone in the centre of the room. Ken stepped forward. "Ma'am," he said quietly. Diana turned and walked out. But here's what made this moment different from the apparent confrontation everyone remembers. Diana didn't leave because she'd said what she needed to say. She left because she realized that Camilla was right. Diana had the title, the ring, the children, the global adoration, and none of it mattered, because Charles had never been hers, and Camilla knew it. 30 people witnessed this moment, but only Ken Wharfe understood what it truly cost. The human cost. Diana had gambled her dignity on the hope that confrontation would bring clarity. Instead, she got Camilla's pity. That was worse than denial, worse than lies. Camilla had looked at her and seen someone who'd already lost. What Diana sacrificed, the last shred of hope that her marriage could be saved. What she lost even in victory. The belief that standing up for herself would change anything. The price of the truth, realizing that some people will never give you the closure you need. Diana walked to the car in silence. Ken opened the door. She got in, and on the drive back to London, Diana cried. Not because Camilla had denied the affair, but because she hadn't needed to. So what happened to everyone involved? Camilla Parker Bowles, she married Charles in 2005, became Queen Consort in 2022. Never publicly acknowledged the affair during Diana's lifetime. The ironic detail, she's now in the exact position Diana once held, wearing the crown Diana once wore. Charles, he got everything he wanted. The divorce, the remarriage, the throne, the specific consequence. He never apologized to Diana, not publicly, not privately. In 1996, he sent her a letter asking for a divorce. She signed it. The institution's fate. The palace never intervened, never acknowledged the affair officially until after Diana's death. The specific changes, none. The aristocracy closed ranks then. They close ranks now. The apology, there wasn't one. And Diana? She left the party that night and never confronted Camilla again. She told friends later. I got my answer. It just wasn't the answer I wanted. Longer-term consequence, Diana channeled her anger into independence. She filed for divorce in 1996. She rebuilt her life. She found purpose in her charity work. But the cost she paid, even in victory, was the belief that love conquers all. The years later revelation. In 2017, Ken Wharfe published his memoir. He wrote about that night in detail. Diana's confrontation with Camilla haunts me, the chapter was titled. He revealed what Diana said in the car afterward. She won, Ken. She's always won. I was just too stupid to see it. Investigation. There was no formal investigation, just Ken's testimony years later. A journalist asked him, "Do you regret not stopping her?" Ken said, "Every day." The vindication, or lack of it, Camilla never admitted wrongdoing. Charles never apologized. The palace never acknowledged Diana's pain. What was finally acknowledged? After Diana's death, Charles and Camilla's relationship became public. What was never acknowledged? The years of gaslighting, denial, and cruelty. What can never be undone? The confrontation that brought Diana no peace. Family response. Prince William later said, "Our mother fought for her dignity every single day." Prince Harry said, "She was surrounded by people who didn't protect her, and the one time she tried to protect herself, they made her feel like she was crazy." The permanent scar. The confrontation was over, but Diana never forgot Camilla's words. "You've got everything you ever wanted. Why are you so unhappy?" Ken Wharfe said those words haunted Diana for the rest of her life. She'd quote them sometimes, bitterly, when talking about the marriage. Diana carried that moment with her, not as a victory, but as proof that some battles can't be won, only survived. Some wounds don't heal. They just become part of the story. So did Diana's bodyguard witness a moment of royal rage? You've seen the evidence. You know what Camilla said. You know what the palace did or didn't do. And you know what actually happened. The universal truth. Confrontation doesn't always bring closure. Sometimes it just reveals how powerless you really are. And sometimes the people who hurt you will never give you the satisfaction of admitting it. Diana once said, "I don't want revenge. I just want the truth to matter." The final image, Diana walking out of that party in Ludlow, head high, eyes dry, refusing to let them see her break. She didn't get the confrontation she wanted. But she got something else, the clarity to stop hoping Charles would choose her. And that clarity, painful as it was, set her free. Her legacy in numbers, 30 witnesses to the confrontation, one bodyguard who never forgot. 26 years before Ken Wharfe finally told the full story, but numbers don't tell the whole story. The human element. Diana wanted to be heard. She wanted to matter. She wanted someone to look her in the eye and admit what they'd done. What she wanted. Acknowledgement. What she got. A lesson in how the powerful protect their own. Final reflection. Ken Wharfe still thinks about that night. "I hear her voice in that hallway," he said in 2017. "I see her hands shaking. I remember the look on her face when Camilla turned away. That's what haunts me, not what Diana said." But what happened when she realised saying it changed nothing? If this story changed what you thought you knew, share it with someone who still believes the fairy tale, because Diana's truth deserves to be told. Next time on Diana Untold, Diana lost her royal security in 1994. 3 years later, she was gone. The palace said it was protocol. The Spencers say it was punishment. You don't want to miss that. Because the answer to, did Diana's bodyguard witness a moment of royal rage? It was never what the palace told you. The truth was always there. You just had to look.